created angelic craft losing the war in the heavens and being cast down to earth from space. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. The woman is the bride of Christ. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. The firstfruits 144,000, who have overcome and conquered the religious Jezebel systems, and been redeemed from the earth. The woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. The remnant bride is not raptured. They are stuck here for the 3.5 years of great tribulation, and are not redeemed until the blast of the last trumpet, when Messiah descends upon the earth himself, and the bride is caught up to meet him. The dead in Christ rising first. Revelations 12 verses 7 to 9 is a repeated overlay to verses 3 and 4, with verses 12 and 13 repeating the event from the perspective of the angels in heaven. Talking about how the great dragon Lucifer is cast down to earth and out of the heavens along with the rest of the rebellious angels. Verse 14 talks of how angry Lucifer is at losing the war in the heavens, and how he wants to take his anger out on the man-child and the remnant bride. However, the man-child isn't there, and the remnant bride is safe in the wilderness, hidden from his face, and so he wreaks havoc among the rest of mankind after trying to kill them with the flood. Those verses prove that Satan's forces come from space, the bottomless pit or abyss. Joel 2:25. And I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten, the cankerworm and the caterpillar, and the palmer worm, for my great army which I sent amongst you. This verse not only reminds us that this satanic force is the Creator's army, but once again makes mention of the worms and caterpillars. This time, though, it makes clear that these are various parts of the army itself. The word for locust, number 697 in the concordance, is arbe, which means a kind of locust, a locust swarm, and its activity. A locust is a fully grown or adult locust. A cankerworm is a young locust. A caterpillar is a locust that is not yet winged, maybe a young teenager type. And a palmer worm is a creeping locust without wings. This could either be a really young giant, or even related to the associated scorpions that follow behind the giants. We know for a fact that at that time the reptilians, for instance, won't bother hiding who they are. This describes the pecking order when it comes to the giant's feeding frenzy. Revelations 9 verse 10. And they had tails like unto scorpions, but there were stings in their tails. The tails of the giants is what follows behind them, injecting people with viruses and nanotechnology. The mark of the beast, probably. Anyone who allows themselves to be injected is toast. Now I can go back to Joel 1 and verse 7 and its gruesome reality, remembering that it comes immediately after mentioning the great teeth of the lions in verse 6. He hath laid my vine waste, and barked my fig tree. He hath made it clean bare, and cast it away. The branches thereof are made white. Picture, if you can, a 20 to 30 foot giant and his associates eating people. How do you imagine people to be in their hands and mouths? I will tell you. A meat popsicle. Meat on little sticks. The fig tree describes people's bodies, and the branches are the limbs that are laid bare and cast away, the remaining white bones stripped of their flesh. So there we have it, folks, the locusts finally revealed. A swarm of unstoppable giants that sweeps across the earth, eating everything in their path, which will include a third of mankind, and all whilst the so-called elite hide away in their underground bases, just in case people are wondering why we don't nuke them when they show up. Before I finish, I want everyone to hear and read for themselves Joel chapter 2 verses 28 and 29. And it shall come to pass afterwards that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, and also upon the servants, upon the handmaidens, in those days will I pour out my spirit. This verse has this wonderful event in its correct place in time, which is after the giants' invasion, and God has removed the army to Megiddo, because the people have repented and turned back to him. Unlike the fool's gold verses in Acts 2:17 and 18, which almost all churchgoers have heard from one pulpit or another over the years, it reads slightly differently. And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Switched around to give us a clue of its tampering. And on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in those days my spirit, and they shall prophesy. These borrowed verses in Acts are two of the most important when it comes to figuring out how Christendom has fallen for the strong delusion of 2 Thessalonians so readily. Pastors galore have often used this New Testament reading to back up the belief that the spiritual gifts of Corinthians chapter 12 are true and godly. It's important to notice that the words in Joel's correct version, and it shall come to pass afterward, that's the after the locust invasion, have been switched in the book of Acts 2, and it shall come to pass in the last days. Another esoteric trick. It sounds similar, of course, but as I have written in the book The Spirit of Jezebel, The Strong Delusion, and The Mystery of Iniquity, the last days are not the period called Great Tribulation. They are the last 2 days of God's spiritual week, the last 2,000 years since the crucifixion. 2 Thessalonians 2:7. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now lets will let, until he be taken out of the way. Being taken out of the way was the crucifixion and resurrection of Yahushua Messiah. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him, Yahushua, whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. This also includes the spiritual gifts in Corinthians, and the shows by the likes of Benny Hinn, etc. They are nothing more than satanic mimicry, empowered by the familiar spirits that inhabit the people, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, i.e. the gospel of the kingdom, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, i.e. Paul's Gospel of Grace version of Christianity. The strong delusion was introduced to mankind on the day of Pentecost through Satan's agent Paul, who actually could have even been Lucifer himself, or an earlier incarnation of Maitreya, Cain. Don't forget, some people accused him of being Apollo before, when he went to Mars Hill. The strong delusion has been with us for the last 2,000 years, folks. Not one person has proven this wrong in the last 4 years since publishing the Jezebel book, and no one can, because that truth came direct from the Creator Father. It was the belief in Paul and the fundamentalist belief in the New Testament that blocked my communion with him. That was until he released me from its power and influence by crumbling my foundation of sand and rebuilding me. The Paul-led church is the one that's heretical, because it is apostate, and not those who reveal Paul to be an agent of deception. Now, of course, the appearance of flying craft and so-called aliens will be a deception, with them coming as our makers, but that's only because mankind outnumbers them to such a degree that if we rebelled against their arrival, the Earth's collective military might could severely deplete them. They absolutely must deceive mankind into being accepted. Once through the gates, though, they will take charge and destroy all we hold dear. This is why the militaries of the world have been taken control of by Luciferian puppets, so we don't shoot them out of the sky before they land, or they're forced here. These giants are made of flesh, of course, but it is their demonic spirit that gives them their power, and it is their spirits that cannot stand the positive orgone energy. If you don't want the giant horde coming to your town, saturate it in orgone, positive orgone. Guns will be of no effect against them. You won't get the chance to remove their heads like King David did, so it's far better to make them fear coming near you. Thanks for your time. All praise, honour and glory to Yahushua and the Most High. This is Stuart Harrison, Watchman X, for the Edge AM.